Technology was the musician's best friend, but now it is going to screw them over. Keep watching. To understand this, I need you to take a journey back in time with me. Let's forget everything we think and know about popular music today. And let's remember how it was for most of human history, till about 100 years ago. Musicians did exist. People loved playing music. There were composers, there were singers, there were instrumentalists. But nobody was particularly famous in the sense of the word that we know today. Nobody had mass impact, and certainly nobody was particularly rich. You had composers who made all the amazing symphonies that we hear, all the classical music from my part of the world. You had probably local singers and local instrumentalists or virtuosos of certain instruments who were very good at what they did. But none of them were global superstars. None of them were richer than the Queen, so to speak. Queen was by far, or the King was definitely one of the richest people in the world. You go down that road. Any case, about 100 years or 130 years ago, 2 or 3 things happened which were to change this. 3 inventions, specifically wireless radio, the phonograph, and the microphone or amplification. The consequence of these 3 inventions were musical performances that were restricted to an immediate audience in a room or perhaps in a large hall at most were now accessible to a much larger group of people. They could be broadcast to a much larger group of people. Think about radio emerging in the 1920s and 1930s. Think Orson Welles' War of the Worlds. Well, just about 5-10 years after that, you really had the emergence of the first musical superstars. Think Frank Sinatra and the Bobby Soxers. Think Doris Day. Think Vera Lynn and the Troops in World War II. This is technology in action, where suddenly a musician is made popular over a large population because their voice can be amplified and broadcasted over a large area. Then we move on to the 1950s, and then things shake into a whole different gear. This is where you have the beginnings. Of course, you have radio, you have a lot of records getting built, you have mass television happening for the first time, particularly in the US. This is where you have things like Elvis Presley appearing on the Ed Sullivan Show, and Elvis Presley probably Sinatra before him, but Elvis Presley probably was the archetype for the global, or maybe not that global at that point in time, but that mass superstar of a musician that everybody adored. Then you get to the 60s. 60s, things kick up to another gear. 2 or 3 things happen. Think of what happens with the Beatles. Think of the Beatles' appearance at the Ed Sullivan Show. Think of the number of people who watched that. I believe that only the moon landing and probably now the recent Super Bowl was a bigger television event. So again, you have musicians who typically were consigned to their localities or certain elite circles. Suddenly everybody sitting in their living room can hear them, can see them, can visualize them, and their personalities become larger than life. So technology is really helping out musicians here. All the technology I've talked about in this particular case is transmission of the music. But what about the creation of the music itself? This is where the 50s and 60s were again instrumental because of things that happened with recording technologies. You could do multi-track recording, the things that you could do, for example, with guitars, with all the different distortion, of course, is invented around that point in time. All the things with different organs, Leslie's, so all the experimentation that the Beatles did, for example. So all of this happened in the 1960s, and suddenly technology is just helping music go on overdrive. 1970s, this goes even further. Think of all the experimentation, think of all the prog that originated at that time period. Think of the beginnings of even what today you would call more techno music, more, machine-generated music, drum machines used on, I think it's Staying Alive, one of the Bee Gees song, either Saturday Night Fever or Staying Alive, that's the first use of a drum machine. So technology, again, helping, taking music to new boundaries. And at the same time, think of who are the popular musicians who are capturing the public imagination. These are proper musicians. Think of Bohemian Rhapsody, think of Queen. Think of the kind of talent that you're starting to see with Michael Jackson. And of course, as we get towards the 80s with Prince, 80s also brings something else in terms of not only musical talent, but think about MTV. Suddenly, it's not just about the music, it's also about the medium of video that is helping amplify, no pun intended, the music even better. And suddenly, technology with MTV, everything that's happening with synthesizers, taking music to new boundaries, it's really like an unstoppable juggernaut. It's getting better and better and better. We get into the 90s, more and more of the same. You have, of course, a lot more production happening. You have the beginnings of Pro Tools. Everybody is maximizing what they can do with music, distribution of music, new mediums starting from initially, of course, you had a little bit more of the vinyls, then you had cassettes, and now you have CDs. Better quality of sound of the actual performance of the musician can be reproduced. And just technology is just helping out so much. I mean, it's just a dream, right? It's like everything that a musician could wish for. You could go, you could make music, you could be good at music, you could become a global superstar. There's an entire industry, an entire ecosystem built around music. All of this keeps going up and up. And then, around the 2000s, we start seeing the first signs of trouble. Some trouble is obvious at first. Some trouble does not seem like trouble to begin with. The part of the trouble that is obvious is probably everything that happens with the reproduction of MP3s and people just downloading MP3s from the internet, piracy, everything, the whole Napster thing, Metallica suing them, all of that. Suddenly the music industry can see that technology, their best friend, at least from a distribution revenue standpoint, is starting to bite them in the ass a little bit, as technology is making it possible for people to access music in a non-physical manner and making copying it absolutely free. It takes the industry about 20 years to figure out a business model which is streaming, but even streaming is not a perfect business model, and the musicians are forced to rely on other means to try and replace some of these lost revenues, such as live performance, merchandise, etc. That's first part of it. Second part of it, talking about technology, we saw the drum machine, we saw Pro Tools. Slowly and slowly, the real sound of real instruments are getting very easily replicated by technology. From a guitar perspective, which is what this channel is about, of course, we know now that you can pretty much replicate the tone of a tube amp, but all instruments, piano tones, flutes, whatever have you, synthesizers can do everything. It's not just about the tones. It is also about the performance. Especially as we're getting now towards the 2010s and 2020s, suddenly you no longer need a drummer really. You can replicate a drum performance very nicely. You could replicate a piano performance very nicely. To the average listener, they cannot tell the difference. In fact, some could say that the actual performance of the replicated performance may even be better. Suddenly, you don't even need full instruments anymore. This is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it means that someone like me sitting in a simple room without the confines of a large studio with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment, where probably with just $500 to $1,000 worth of equipment, I can create everything in my room. So that's great. It helps more people come out, which is why you see an explosion of more and more people producing music, especially with YouTube and all the social media platforms. But at the same time, it removes the human requirement from creating a musical performance. This is kind of where we are today. There is something else that is going on as well. The music that is getting successful is suddenly music designed not for the purpose of expression necessarily, which is what music started off with. It's for the purpose of catching attention, as is everything else in this world as of as of AD 2024. It's about what can catch the attention of my audience in 15 seconds. How can I hook them? How can I get them to want to listen to it again? How can I get them to not skip as they are kind of skipping through, just running through, finding things to continue interesting them and dominating their attention span? That's how music starts to get designed. Suddenly, technology is not such a great thing anymore. Something like a social media network, which initially meant that I could spread my music to many, many more people all around the world. Suddenly, I just can't spread my music all around the world, because guess what? It's one of two things. Either I have to catch people's attention by making something that it may not be great music, but it just catches people's attention. It's like giving them a shot of adrenaline or a shot of sugar just so that I can catch them, or it's about paying money. Because guess what? The way all of these companies make money is that they monetize people's attention. What does it take to be a successful musician in today's day and age, and what will it take in the future? It is not about creating the most expressive music. I mean, there will always be exceptions, but no, it's not really about that. It's about, how do I get people's attention? How do I keep their attention? How do I do things that help all the algorithms, that all of these platforms that now distribute music? How do I do things to appease these algorithms? Now, what skills does this require? You don't necessarily have to be amazing at your instrument. Technology can play the instrument for you. Let alone instrument. You don't have to even be an amazing singer. Technology can practically synthesize and create a human voice and sing everything for you. I would argue you don't even need to, you don't need to be particularly attractive or anything. Again, if you've seen anything of the latest AI generations, you can just create anything you want. The skill set that you need to be a successful artist or a popular musician in 2024 and beyond is not going to be who can play their instrument, who can necessarily write the best overall songs. It's going to be who can harness all these technological tools that we have best in order to catch the attention of people and keep them humming till they move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing to keep up with their dopamine requirements. This skill set is not describing a musician. This is not how musicians think. Musicians are not necessarily creatures of optimizing, art is not about optimization. It is not about business. It is about expression. The music business was always a music business, no doubt. But now it has reached a level where the art part of the business has gone away, because it's all about how do you leverage technology to optimize your product to best leverage the algorithm. And that's sadly the person who's going to be successful at that. It's not going to be the musician. It's going to be something else. It's going to be the person who's great at leveraging social media. It's the person who's good at being a business owner, a person who's good at technology. It is not a musician. Technology was the musician's best friend. I would argue that technology gave us the musician's century, which you could say was circa 1930 to about now 2025 to 2030. That was the musician's century when musicians got the chance to be world-dominating superstars. But now technology has moved on. Now the people who will dominate not only the world, but even the world of music, they're no longer going to be the musicians. They're going to be the technopreneurs, the social media experts, the people best equipped to hack human attention. And that is a sad reality. We have to accept it. There will, of course, remain real musicians in the different corners of the world, in the different corners of the internet, or whatever that is that follows. But this is where popular music is likely going. And am I happy or sad about it? If I say I'm sad about it, I guess I'm being a little bit Luddite-like, because technology moves on, life moves on. But I can't help but feel a ping of nostalgia for an era that truly allowed people who are good at music to be the popular musicians. Alright, this is all I have for now. Till next time.